Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is finally in theaters worldwide. Like any great Marvel movie, it works on multiple levels. With that in mind, here are a half-dozen spoiler-heavy lines in Shang-Chi that mean far more than you might realize when you first hear them. At one point, John says, "I speak ABC" to Katie, which many viewers might take as just a cute way of saying "I speak English." In actuality, ABC is an abbreviation for American-born Chinese. Writer-director Destin Daniel Cretton said just before the film's release at a press event attended by Looper, "Our conversation behind which languages should be spoken was always rooted in the logic of the characters. That conversation started in the writer's room, and then once our actors came in, it was always a dialogue with them. Is this character bilingual, trilingual, quadrilingual? Characters could speak whatever made sense at the time." As for the ABC line, Simu Liu, who plays Shang-Chi, said the exchange feels very real, explaining, "ABC, of course, means American-born Chinese. It's the first time that you see in a movie someone just calling that out, but it's a lived experience." Early in the movie, at an unguarded moment when the characters are just living their everyday lives, we hear, "We're living in a world where any minute half the population could disappear." This line not only alludes to the wider MCU universe, with plot lines revolving around Thanos and his infamous snap, but also to the mindset of ordinary humans still grappling years later with the ramifications. Although Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings doesn't add any new names to known victims of the snap, the event touched everyone, and it does make clear that it's still hanging over the heads of every person on the planet. The general unease of the populace is backed up by a support group poster that can be glimpsed next to the door that Shaun enters when he's visiting Katie's family. It reads, "Post-blip anxiety, you are not alone." The seemingly straightforward line, "Give me the pendant and no one gets hurt," represents the final moment of Shaun's innocence. For more than a decade, he has been working to build himself a new life in San Francisco, one far away from his Chinese upbringing. But as we're about to see, he hasn't been neglecting his physical fitness. When the robber makes that statement, Shaun could have just handed over the jade pendant, shrugged his shoulders, and Katie would likely think no less of him. But that wouldn't make much of a movie, would it?
Does he look like he can fight? Come on, bro!
In a heartbeat, Shaun launches from mild-mannered bus patron to full-on Shang-Chi, pulling out acrobatic, environment-embracing, ass-kicking moves that would make Jackie Chan sit up and applaud. In a matter of moments, he doesn't just shatter half the windows on the bus, but also his remaining anonymity and any pretense of normalcy with friend Katie, who watches the whole thing with her jaw open before finally regaining enough sense to hop behind the wheel and drive the bus. By the time the scene is over, everything has changed. Shaun has revealed himself to Katie as Shang-Chi, his old life has dragged him back in, and he must go to China to confront his past. Also, the city of San Francisco has a really big mess to clean up. Movies have employed training sequences for decades, but it's another thing to show and explain in raw detail how day after day, month after month, year after year, you were raised to be a killing machine. At one point, Shang-Chi says, "From sunup to sundown, I was taught every possible way to kill a man." Some movies have the hero adept in martial arts from the get-go, as if it's just something they picked up. Others allude to the training but don't truly depict the full dedication it requires. But by the time you're finished hearing the tale of Shang-Chi's upbringing under the tutelage of his father and the mysterious death dealer, you fully realize how he was able to mow down those baddies on the bus. Keep in mind, for almost the entirety of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Shang-Chi does not have even one ring. In essence, he's an unpowered would-be hero relying solely on his training to battle a wide array of threats who have everything from superpowers to, at the bare minimum, a machete hand. So yes, Shang-Chi is a trained killer and Simu Liu is talented enough to sell you on all those years of training. Of course, by the end of the movie, Shang-Chi does come into possession of the Ten Rings, so just imagine how powerful he'll be the next time we see him in action. When Wenwu says America was terrified of an orange, some viewers in the audience may have no clue what the wearer of the Ten Rings is talking about, but here's what he's referring to. Audiences buying tickets to Iron Man 3 in 2013 thought they were going to see Tony Stark square off against arguably his arch-enemy in the comics, the Mandarin, like the orange. Instead, they got Guy Pearce's Aldrich Killian as the man behind the man, and Ben Kingsley as Trevor Slattery, a British actor pretending to be the Mandarin. At the time, some loved the bait and switch, others were disappointed or even flat out angry. As the years went by, a third narrative became the loudest. By teasing a Chinese character and instead giving audiences a white one, Marvel seemed to be perpetuating a shameful Hollywood tradition of co-opting and whitewashing the Asian experience. Marvel head honcho Kevin Feige became determined to not only address such concerns, but take back the Mandarin. Which is why, in 2014, Marvel released a one-shot called All Hail the King, which depicted a post-Iron Man 3 Trevor Slattery in prison. The short film features a reporter telling Slattery that his portrayal has angered the Ten Rings, the terrorist group associated with the real Mandarin. At the end of the film, the interviewer reveals his true identity as an agent of the Mandarin and takes Slattery prisoner.
There's somebody who wants to meet you.
Do I know him?
No. But you took his name, and now he wants it back.
Which brings us to Shang-Chi, Wenwu's recounting of the story and the later revelation that Slattery has been held prisoner ever since in the real Mandarin's dungeon basement. The advice given to Katie when she joins the battle at Ta Lo, "If you aim at nothing, you hit nothing," is more than just archer mindset. As we see at the beginning of the film, Shaun and Katie were leading a largely aimless existence, valet parking cars for low wages, spending nights drinking and singing karaoke. As Katie's family were all too eager to point out, it felt like a roadmap to nowhere. But what she didn't realize is that her drinking buddy did in fact have a purpose, even if he was actively working to suppress it. Through Shang-Chi's embracing of his destiny and her support as a loyal friend, the two characters ended the film with something to finally aim for: a future as superheroes, possibly as Avengers, and perhaps Katie continuing to embrace her skills as an archer and car chase driver. If you hang around until the very end of the credits, you'll hear Xia Ling say, "Let's get started, we have a lot of work to do," indicating the dawning of a new day for the character. For years, her father Wenwu had forbidden her from training, forcing the young girl to slyly study the men around her and resolve to be even more effective in her movements. Later in life, she'd become disappointed by another man when brother Shang-Chi left her behind in China. Now, after the heroes won the day at Ta Lo and her father is no longer a threat to contend with, Shang-Chi has taken the Ten Rings and once again left, this time for a new life of adventure in San Francisco and the Sanctum Sanctorum. This leaves Xia Ling alone to rebuild and rule over a new kingdom, which is where we find her in this end-credit scene, surrounded by people training for battle. Where will this new chapter take her? It's hard to tell, because in the comics there is no Xia Ling, but Xia Ling could be based on the Cursed Lotus, a supervillain who's the older half-sister of Shang-Chi. In the comics, the Cursed Lotus was a gifted hand-to-hand combatant and seductress who longed to follow in her father's footsteps and led her own criminal organization called the Oriental Expediters. Although there's an extremely good chance that name will not be appearing in the MCU, it's possible that the people we see training under her tutelage are early Expediters, and as we've already seen from Xia Ling's prominence in the underground fighting community, she knows plenty of tough folks who would likely be for hire. We almost certainly haven't seen the last of Xia Ling, and Shang-Chi better be prepared for another smackdown with Sis. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite MCU movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.